Hello, friends, and welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast, where we focus on optimizing the well-being and best practices of insurance and financial professionals today. On this show, our objective is to help you optimize your life, optimize your profession, and learn from other optimized advisors. I'm your host, Scott Heinola. We hope you enjoy the show. So, yesterday, hello.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming in. Jared Tanimoto, CFP, also FPA president, right? We'll dive into all of that.
Appreciate it.
How you got to where you are today. Also, 40 under 40 advisor, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Actually heading out to New York next week. They're doing a little conference and get together with some of the recipients for this year and past years. So that should be exciting. Haven't traveled in quite some time.
I want to hear more about that. So those are the three main things that we want to talk about. FPA, your journey within FPA and where you're at today, how FPA helps advisors and the place that it plays a role in our industry, and then also your journey as an advisor and kind of where you're at with this 40 under 40, what that means. And it's a pretty, I would say, an elite group of people and nationally speaking.
Thank you.
So congratulations to you. That's fantastic. So you're just coming down the road from Irvine.
Yep. Not too far of a drive, 20 minutes, no traffic.
Just moving.
Just moving from Irvine to Irvine, so added one to the family. So we were in a small little house and we needed more space. Now my wife and I both work a lot from home, so we needed just a little bit more room. And so it's been great. I kind of changed my practice a little bit just because of the pandemic, and I think all for the better.
Yeah, good. You know, I was talking with one of our advisors we've worked with for a number of years, also just down the road here, local. And it's a funny story in the sense that this was end of March, or maybe it was early April 2020. And he has a team. So he had one of his assistants coming in to the client meeting who was prepared, ready beforehand. And he walks in to sit down to address the client and sees his staff there, his assistant, and she's in gloves, double masked with the screen on, and nothing to that reason, other than the sense that you just don't know how people are going to react to that.
Sure.
And so that was the last time he had a in-person client meeting. He completely pivoted 100% to virtual appointments only. Mm-hmm. And he says his productivity has increased 200%. His metric is...
Yeah, definitely. I could see that.
It's incredible. Mm-hmm. And he was 100% in person prior. He says, I never conducted a meeting on any level with clients that was not in person. So it was like the pandemic hit, we all flatlined. It was like, we need, what are those called?
Middle resuscitators or
the shock, whatever they're called.
EMP or
Yeah, it's like everybody needed to be resuscitated. Okay, we got to rethink this. We got to retool. There's been so many examples of how industries, financial services and insurance services retooled quickly, accelerated what would have been a 5-year growth curve down to like 6 or 8 months.
Sure.
And here we are.
Yeah. Crazy world we live in nowadays. But
so how did you get into becoming a financial advisor? What is that journey?
So I actually also went to school up the street in UC Irvine. Graduated 2010, and
an anteater.
That's
right.
Had no idea what I wanted to do. I like finance, and an advisor kind of was one of those that was on they had a career fair. And so I actually went straight out, and I didn't go really into advisory role, but I went to New York Life. So I was at an insurance company. And so I was with one of those teams where kind of the mantra was to pick up the phone and make $200 a day. So I was cold calling every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., just dialing and selling mainly life insurance. And so that was kind of the start of my career, which led to I was at a few other broker-dealer insurance companies. And then in 2017, I get into a little bit my story a little bit more later, but that's when I started my own RIA.
So you, at UCI, what was your major?
Business econ. So with that, I had no idea what I was going to do with a business econ major. It kind of could lead into anything, and it just happened. Talked to someone who led me on to someone who I got an interview at this company, and didn't know I'd be cold calling and dialing for
premium.
But I think I learned a lot about hard work and ethic just by the first couple of years I was at New York Life.
100%. I think, you think about those traditional training programs and platforms that using life insurance as the example. I mean, that's what life insurance was founded on, was these
Sure.
New York Lifes, Mass Mutuals, Penn Mutuals, 100+ year history companies, and bringing them in and it write down a list of 100 people.
Right.
And then start dialing and figure out how this product works. And it first, you could be the most intelligent advisor, but if I can't convince a customer, right, to allow me to help them in their financial needs, where am I?
Right.
Probably not very far along.
Definitely, yeah. And a lot of it was, I didn't have that list of 100 names, and most of my network didn't have the money or were my age and right out of college. So we actually did use that old model where for some of the years we would go door to door and knocking. So it was just pounding the pavement and a bunch of hard work. Didn't know much other than life insurance at that point.
So you were with New York Life for how long?
A couple years. I think it was around 2.
Okay.
And
so step 1, just get insurance license.
Correct.
Obviously, I've got my degree. I'm reasonably intelligent. I can figure this out. Then it grew to what?
Yeah. So it was interesting because I wanted to get my securities license, but they were kind of looking at me and saying, hold off on a little bit. We just want you're doing good with insurance. Let's just focus on this. And I don't think they wanted me to get distracted from what we were doing well. And at some point, I realized I wasn't really growing and learning. I wanted to know more about retirement planning and financial planning. And so that's when I picked up a book and got a course and started studying for my CFP. And that eventually led me down to joining the FPA, kind of changing the way my practice and the way I ran business, other than just selling insurance.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on the CFP designation today for new advisors or advisors who are in the practice who are saying, something I never got and maybe I should?
I don't think I think it's great to have, and especially for someone new to the industry, there's a lot of these really great programs out here. There's Cal State Fullerton. They even have like a financial planning undergraduate program, so you could kind of hit the ground running as soon as you graduate, and I think it's really good then. I think if you've been in the business for a while, it's kind of really just refresh what you kind of already know and give you a little bit more credibility. But I think it really just depends on your knowledge of financial planning. For some people, it'll be really great education, and for others, I think it's just another designation.
Yeah. And certainly I think from a consumer's perspective, I don't know of any financial services designation that's more known to any just layman person.
Sure, yeah. They've been running the ads and commercials and trying to make it more public knowledge about what a CFP is. So I think that's great and helps us kind of distinguish ourselves in the industry. But a lot of really great designations out there, and I think it really just comes down to what you're providing for the client and how well you're serving your clients.
Did you get the CFP online, or did you do an in-class education?
Mine was through Pepperdine University. It was a virtual or online program, but through that college. So they're all through colleges. You could attend online or in person.
Right.
At the time, I was just working a ton of hours and needed the flexibility. But our chapter FPA of Orange County partners with the UCI program, and they run a really great in person. And I think you'll learn a little bit more because you could kind of lean more on the instructor, and you'll have other peers to kind of go through those courses with.
Right. It's really a university setting.
Sure. Yeah.
And the course text and all that, as opposed to just an automated curriculum.
Yeah.
Like American College or what have you.
The online one was pretty boring.
Yeah.
A lot of just textbook reading.
Get through it.
Yeah.
And sit for that exam.
So a lot of hours in the textbook.
A lot of hours. You got to grudge through it. Well, good. So your practice today and the journey to get where you are now looks like what? So you left New York Life. You started an RIA.
So I hopped around a couple of other firms, and during that time I was studying for my CFP, and eventually, actually after joining the FPA, that was probably a big pivot or pivotal point in my career where it kind of just opened this door to, before you're kind of just segmented into whatever broker-dealer firm you're in. You don't really network with outside other advisors. And so when I joined the FPA, I met a bunch of brand new people, introduced me to one person, introduced me to another. I found out about the RIA model and how other advisors, they were starting their own firms as a solo advisor. And that was the initial kind of, it was probably a couple of years that I had that thought in my mind, should I start my own firm? Does it make sense? And finally in 2017, a little after I got my CFP designation, it's when I left my broker-dealer and started my own firm.
Yeah, you talk about how, in your journey, you've recognized that many advisors, let's label them that at this point in time, profess themselves to be holistic, comprehensive, but really just brokers in disguise.
Sure.
So talk a little bit more about, or give me an example of that experience and where the light bulb went off.
So I met with New York Life. It was all just, we want you to pound the pavements and push term or push whatever the whole life product is kind of whatever your manager wanted. And I was actually at a broker dealer in the last one, Principal, and Ryan Price. He was another FPA member that I was working with. I think I look up to him as a mentor, but we were still at a broker dealer, but I think we were doing pretty comprehensive, good work for clients, financial planning. It was a holistic model, and at one point though, I just realized I was paying fees left and right, and my payout rate for my AUM was pretty low, and I kind of just did the math, and I said, it would make more sense if I broke off and continue this as an RIA firm.
So how did you start what's the process to start an RIA? Talk me through that.
It was just a lot of notes in Excel and plugging in numbers into different models and projecting whether or not, what are the expenses. And then eventually you reach out either to some sort of firm to help you register. You could do it yourself. Doesn't cost too much to do the initial registration. But once that happens, it's just kind of lining everything up to transition your clients to whatever platform you're on the RIA, and making sure all the technology and with our industry, the hardest part about an RIA is that you don't just have a system to plug into. You have to choose what CRM you're using, what financial planning software, rebalancing, trading, whatever it is, and you kind of have to piece those together and create kind of a platform for your clients so that they could have a good user experience. So you're kind of driving
an ecosystem.
That. Yeah, ecosystem. Yeah, that's I would say is what a large part of getting started is.
Yeah. So in 2017, you started the RIA, and here it is now. Has it adjusted over time? What challenges would you say early on you faced that you're, oh man, we need to pivot or?
Yeah. So I realized early on that once you start your own firm, you are, as a solo advisor in my firm, you are everything. You're your bookkeeper, your marketing, your compliance, and so there's, I think that's probably the biggest challenge is just wearing all these hats at once while you still have to figure out how you're going to grow and structure your business and get new clients and as well serve these clients in a efficient manner and do a good job for them.
Yeah. So the typical clients that you see today, do they fit a given mold, age, psychographic, whatever the metric is? So
I would say I have two different pools. I would say from my the clients I brought over, and still a lot of the ones I keep on getting referrals from are your traditional retirees, pre-retirees. I would say there's no niche there, just a traditional retirement planning client.
Right.
And then over the years, I've brought on a lot more, I would say, Henrys, high earners who
Yeah.
don't really have a lot of investable assets, but a lot of them are in tech. Some common problems are they have stock options, maybe student loan debt, and the advisor down the street won't serve them because they don't have $1 million in assets. So I kind of built out a retainer model as well as like a one-time planning model for that group, because I think it's a group that desperately needs really good financial advice, but it's really hard for them to go out and I think access it unless they're do-it-yourselfers.
Right. So some of these would be, and you're talking about two generations, right, of people. I mean, the mindset between the Henrys and the mindset of the retirees that you serve, it's dramatically different.
Yep, growth mode versus distribution. So climbing up the hill versus climbing down the mountain.
And even more than that, like the customer experience, right? What a millennial or a Gen X or what have you would expect, I would think would be dramatically different than that of a current retiree, maybe less technically savvy.
Sure.
Although changing on a daily basis, they're the younger one. The Henrys are the ones pushing the envelope of, we need a fancy platform, and what's your tech stack look like? Not that they know particularly, but what does it look like? What does it feel like? What's the value proposition?
Right.
So how have you, and then with that, are a lot of these you're finding the do-it-yourselfers? So they're saying, no. We've got an active 401k plan. We're managing our investments through whatever platform. Just help guide me. Be a shepherd.
So to answer your first one, along kind of the experience, the journey that you kind of come on board to when you bring on a client, I think the younger clients kind of drove me to create a good experience. But I've come to realize, I think even my retiree clients really enjoy. I think everyone wants a good experience. So, and I'm learning, more and more over the years that a lot of my retiree clients that I thought wouldn't adapt to new technology, to Zoom, to whatever it is, especially in this past year, has kind of accelerated everything probably 10 years plus into the future. I think one really great thing about it is I think it caused the industry and advisors and clients to kind of be more flexible and adaptable to change.
Do you market your business now to acquire new clients, or is mostly just word of mouth and through your centers of influence?
Yeah, so I know earlier we were talking about kind of the fee-only model, and earlier on I still value insurance, and I still do insurance planning and refer that out to some other insurance people I work with.
Right.
But one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to go fee only early on was to kind of distinguish myself. And there's these networks that I kind of joined that have referred people specifically looking for fee only advisors. And early on, that's kind of driven some of my growth. I've been getting referral leads in through some of those programs. And then eventually down the road, I think referrals more recently have kind of been that source of new clients.
So is this somebody that you used to work with in terms of who you partnered with as an insurance professional, and when a client has a need for whatever that insurance is, whether that's a guaranteed income or life insurance planning or long-term care or what have you? Is it one person or is it
a handful of people? A bunch of, I think I know one still at New York Life, and a lot of them actually broke off to kind of be independent, either advisors or in the insurance industry. And so I still connect. I'm still good friends with some of them, and those are usually who I, depending on what kind of insurance need, I'll refer them out to that person.
And do they cross-pollinate?
Occasionally, but usually they're I'd say the clients that come to them are really going to them for mostly just insurance needs and not looking to them as a financial planner. At least the ones that I'm working with. Yeah,
so you just build a good rapport with them and trust and know who to call on when you need that.
Yeah, and then they, part of it is I expect them to do a really good job and provide good customer service, and it does take a lot of time to go through that insurance arm of the planning process, and so they kind of will loop me in and keep me informed on the process that the client is going through.
So when you're introduced to a brand new client, what is the first step that you kind of take them through? Do you have anything unique that you and the firm do?
Um, I would say maybe one unique thing is that on the onboarding, client always asks, what can I bring to the meeting? And I usually just reserve one meeting to get to know the client, get to understand what their goals are without really even diving in deep into some of those numbers. And it's just a really long conversation, and I think it opens up a lot of things that maybe sometimes get skipped out in the planning process.
Yeah, just finding out who they are as a person.
Sure. Yep.
And then you start to dive into the
Yeah.
investments, the financial planning, what actions do we take first? What about the estate, aspect of clients' plan and talking about them having a family trust and the reasons for or opposed, and those higher net worth clients, maybe some other higher end trust planning strategies. Do you start with that, or you end with that, or where do you find that in the process?
That's usually probably towards a little bit later on.
Okay.
I do have some people that, that's one of their primary concerns. So if that's the case, then we'll tackle that further or sooner. And then I'll either use outside attorneys, or there's a couple services that kind of allow me as an advisor to drive that estate planning process. So if it's kind of a simple trust and will that needs to be set up, power of attorney, then I can kind of help go down that with them. And then if it's a little bit more of a complex situation, then I always refer that out.
Yeah, that's good. You have attorneys and CPAs in your sphere.
Yep. Always good to have those too.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to transition into and talk a little about is the FPA. We've been involved in that as an organization, nationally as well as locally, and certainly there's chapters right all across the country. FPA's Financial Planning Association, been around for many, many, many years. Insurance professionals, I would say, predominantly are probably aware of NAIFA, National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. And, it's an interesting time in all aspects of associations, organizations, where there seems to be more and more popping up, and it's challenged memberships, I think, as a whole.
Definitely.
So I question, is all of that as a whole a good thing, or what challenges does it create, and where do we all end up? And I don't expect an answer, but just sharing some thoughts of kind of like where we are with associations, and certainly FPA plays a fundamental role for everybody who deals with clients and their investments in financial planning as a whole. So talk a little bit about how, FPA exists, and maybe we can dive into that a little bit.
So yeah, a lot of good stuff right there. I think if I talk about FPA more recently, when I came into the president role, I think I went to one meeting, and then the pandemic hit, and we kind of entered this lockdown. And
you're a pandemic president.
If I had known, I don't know if I would have taken up this role. But immediately, I mean, if you look left and right, there's webinars and speakers and things offered for CEs. You could 10 of them show up in your inbox every day.
Yeah.
And so I knew we had to still provide a lot of value to our members in order for them to want to continue coming to these meetings. And I think we quickly adapted to a virtual model. We're going back to a hybrid model now, but we continue to get really good speakers. We've tried to drive engagement, involve our partners, involve different subcommittees and different types of engagements that members could have virtually. And it's kind of got us afloat through the pandemic. I think a lot of chapters really saw a huge drop in membership. And a lot
You're
of
talking about just nationally speaking. Yeah.
And a lot of chapters, these meetings would be a huge driver of their revenue to stay afloat. And for us, with our strong support of our partners, we were able to provide good speakers throughout the year. And I think we are one of the chapters that's seen one of the highest attendance rates. At one of them, we even had over 200 virtual attendees, where I think a lot of people have struggled to even get members to attend at free events. So
yeah, I mean, even the one, so interesting is the challenge, even the adjustment of technologies. What technology are we going to use that serves a purpose and can actually support our need? So FPA used all along Hopin.
No, as soon as that happened, we got a committee together and said, let's go interview and vet all these different platforms. And cost was a big one. A lot of these charge 10,000 per event, and so we just
Wow.
went to. And a lot of them don't like to list their prices. They make you hop on a phone call with this person, then go through a demo, and then they'd say, "Oh, we're $10,000," and so for a nonprofit organization, that's a pretty tough bill to bite. So we it took a while to kind of hone in on a platform that would
That's an
carry us
interesting
through.
tactic. I don't. Why not have transparency in your pricing? Because you're ultimately going to find out. And so I end up investing all this time and hearing about you, knowing that we don't have the budget for $10,000, or in many cases probably more. Doesn't make sense.
I think at that high ticket price level, that I'm not sure if that seems to be better results for.
Maybe we just
Yeah.
wow you and you agree to pay 10 grand.
Right.
Wow. Okay, so you went through that process and you ultimately got to hop in
Hmm.
right out of the gate, which had its challenges.
Definitely.
So working through a technology platform to deliver a good client experience was not easy. Through FPA. And this is us as a sponsorship too. We've learned things as we went along, like pre-recording videos for commercials, as opposed to going live on certain commercials or
Yeah,
advertisements.
and you've done a great job, especially with the studio. I look at those videos and I say that's way above what everyone else is putting out there with their Logitech cameras and
Well, thank
cell
you.
phone speakers.
Yeah, it's challenging, right? I mean, you want to create a good example, but also the bandwidth is a problem with a lot of these events.
Sure.
So how do we, and with your point, you were getting hundreds of people on some of these events. I remember one where we had a guest speaker at the end. It was the tail end of the meeting, so the very end of the day, and I think they were still logging 80 to 90 people during their presentation, which is fantastic. I mean, the answer there is that's content that people are interested in.
Right. And I think just as a good community that the FPH in Orange County has kind of built up over the years that has kind of kept that group together. I think if we were all virtual before, and I guess not virtual before, but if we weren't such a tight knit group in a local community, I think we would have seen a lot larger drop off in the attendees.
How many members deep is FPAOC? And there was some consolidation, right, in the last few years?
So we, I think, hit a peak a little over 500, and during the pandemic, we probably lost maybe 5%, maybe up to 10% of the membership.
Wow, that's very little.
And we've kind of gained probably.
Because you absorbed Riverside too at one point, right? Maybe before you.
I think that was a while back.
Okay,
but yeah.
okay. Because there'd be San Diego, separate chapter, and then there's
Los Angeles and then
okay,
Ventura.
and Ventura. And that's all of California?
There's a ton of NorCal chapters.
Okay,
and
of
then-
course,
but
Bay
yeah.
Area and everything. Okay. Do you know, I'm just curious, what some of the largest chapters would be across the country?
In a region, I think we are actually one of the largest because
Okay.
we're such a small county compared to, I think, like Minnesota has, I think that might be one of the chapters that's close to 1,000, but they draw in
It's the
members
whole state.
from the whole state. So
Oh, yeah.
a lot of they've kind of, we looked to some of those chapters to kind of adopt that virtual model because they were already doing it because members that live 3 hours away couldn't drive to events all the time.
So we're now allowed to do some in-person activity.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. How did we adjust from going fully virtual, which, as great as anybody can deliver, I think we've all gotten to a state where we are virtually zoomed out,
Sure.
webinared out, hop-ined out, whatever the platform is, or it's got to be pretty darn compelling for me to tune in.
So we're trying to look to a platform that's going to more so support an in-person event. So
Okay.
because we have learned so much from adopting technology and platforms, we're going to have this app that when you're at an event now, you can look up your information, submit your CEs, see the schedule, chat with other members.
Oh, wow.
So we're trying
Through
to
a phone app.
a phone app, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
That's pretty cool.
we didn't want to drop the virtual because I think still a lot of people, we've gotten feedback that said, "Hey, I always drive I come down from LA, and I love to attend in person, but I always can't. It's so nice to be able to log in and watch these when I'm not able to get out of the office. So we're still gonna have. We hired a videographer that's going to be recording all our future events. So we're going to have a hybrid platform going forward. So you could choose to either come in person or to watch it from your home or office.
There's so many silver linings. You try and stay glass half full mentality in life. And certainly that's how I try and focus on things. And this is a perfect example of pre-pandemic. You would have only hosted in-person meetings. You would have never taken the time.
We've
Or
talked
you
about
probably
it
would not have taken the time.
I think they've been talking about recording a video and just playing it online somewhere for, I want to say, at least the past 5 years. But no one, I think, it would have been a big challenge back then, and no one wanted to take that initiative to invest in that. And now I think we really see the value in being able to provide this. So we'll have both options. So if you feel comfortable coming in person or are just too busy to drive halfway across town, you could attend and get your CEs and see the event the same way, either in person or virtual.
And virtually, you face it, right? There's some people who are going to look at an agenda and say, ooh, I really want to get that content because that's very specific to my need or my interest. Well, if I'm virtually, I'm not offending anybody by walking in late, leaving early, or what have you. And so, if you look at the big picture, what a great way to maximize the value to any customer. That's what we really are as members. How long have you been a member?
I think it's going on 6 years now. So
Okay.
I would say I'm pretty young as an FPA member because I look through the list of we always do these things where we congratulate people for milestones, and I see 20, 30. I think the last one was I saw a 45-year member in there.
So Silver Farm, like how long has he been a member as an example?
He said he was on the original board of I think they call it IF, I can't even remember.
What
but,
it used to
what
be
it
called
used to
way
be,
back when.
Mm-hmm.
So FBA dates back, he has to have been 40 years, 30 decades, right? 30, 40 years.
And he's still one of our most active members. He's helping put on
He
the
is such a
upcoming
great,
tax and financial
very
forum.
nice guy. Yeah. That's an interesting event, which I don't know how I ended up on the board of that. I feel bad about my.
No, thank you.
But happy to try and help out where I can, and I think I went to that the very first time. Mm-hmm. So it was the last time it was done in person. So that was 19, and it was a great event, very high level. Very skilled conversation, strategically so. But that's another example of an event that's held every year. Mark is certainly instrumental in making that happen. But that's an area where individuals can tap into a full day's curriculum of very high-end specific tax and usually estate or trust planning strategies. It's not the cookie cutter approach to just here's financial planning content.
Yep. So they dive really deep into right now. The next one they're talking about tax legislation, and I think there's a speaker on index fund or IULs as an asset class, and then also a couple of attorneys that are going to dive pretty deep into topics that we normally wouldn't hear at our typical quarterly education meetings.
And that's in person, but also a virtual offering.
Yep. So
what's the capacity of the venue?
The venue is at the Pacific Club. They could hold, I think, up to 100 people.
All right.
And
now the next quarterly meeting, let's take a step back. The standard offering of meeting accessibility for FPA members is what? There's virtual study groups or in-person study groups. Mm-hmm. And those would be more intimate in nature, like case study content.
Correct.
Right? What does that look like?
Before, it used to be at an advisor's office. There were probably 10 to 15 advisors, and they would either bring case studies to talk about or just dive into any kind of recent planning things that they had questions on and want to get opinion from the room.
Who attends those? Do you find that it's the younger advisor?
I would say it's pretty diverse.
Really?
At one point, I feel like I was the youngest one in the room there, and at one point, I think we were 4 or 5 people meeting, and just with consistency, the group grew, and we have good leadership running that now.
That's great. So that's the one element, and then you have the quarterly meetings,
Mhm.
which are designed to be full-day events.
So as CFPs, most of our members are CFPs. There's a good amount that aren't, and we also offer some CPA, CEs, but most of them satisfy the requirements for CEs for all of our CFPs. And so we do 5 speakers a day, 4 times a year, and those are our largest events that we put on. And then we do other things like allied professionals and tax and financial forum. We do mixers. We do next gen. A big one that's kind of sprung up during the pandemic has been our community outreach, where we've done a ton of pro bono. I think we've reached more people in the past year and a half than we ever have before, just because we set up a virtual program where people could schedule in with advisors. So it's a big technology piece that that committee developed, and we've kind of been recognized nationally for that program.
Do you think that's another example of what something would have taken years to develop?
So before, it was going to a library or a company that would host it, and people would just come in person, and the reach would be harder to get people to come out and drive to sit down with someone. But now we just have people, we put it out there, and people are scheduling kind of like on a Calendly program. We have it set up to see that planner's availability, and then it just books it with that planner. And so we're able to, on scale, do a lot more because the planners are all doing it virtually. We don't have to gather at a certain date at a certain time and reserve a venue. It's just from the advisor's offices.
And this is pro
homes.
bono.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So an advisor who's interested in doing that, they're engaging how much of their time? Is it up to them?
We say, if you want to come on board, if you could just do, say, an hour a week, we could make that availability, schedule that on your calendar, and we'll limit to whatever time you have. So really, it's if you just want to give some of your time, then you can go ahead and do so.
Now, very interested in this. How do consumers find this as an avenue for financial planning on a pro bono basis?
A lot of it is through just the outreach of our members to different companies.
Wow.
They've been doing a lot of financial literacy and putting that out, social media. They've even tried running some social media ads to get the word out. Clients that have networks, and so every member is just trying to do the part to spread awareness about that. And I think that's the hardest part, because as a pro bono effort, it's hard to spend a lot of money to get people to come in for pro bono where it's pro bono. So there's not a lot driving our ability to market it.
Purely everybody donating their time or
Yep.
resources to this.
And kind of to make it very holistic, we don't allow sponsors for that program because they don't want any outside influence on kind of what content is being pushed. It's just truly good advice. You come, ask your questions. There's no compensation. There's no selling there. It's just, we're here to answer any kind of financial question you have and get you through whatever it is that you might have an issue with.
Do you do any of that now? I'm just curious. I'm asking because I'm curious to what a client looks like.
So I over the past year, I've done a handful of pro bono sessions, and it ranges from someone coming in and before was asking things about PPP or their business and what things are available to them or what they should be doing because they lost revenue. So I think it's a pretty broad range. Before, it was probably younger families that have never had an advisor or someone to look to give them solid financial advice.
Right. Wow, that's very interesting. And this is something that is available nationally through other FPA chapters, or?
Other FPA chapters are doing it just in different ways. And so our chapter has kind of shared this platform that they use to schedule and book. And I think that was the biggest challenge, is just coordinating that. That's a huge effort just to schedule people without it taking, it's all volunteers, so we don't really have anyone on staff being able to monitor what goes on at all times. So huge amount of time that went in an investment to build this program out.
It's interesting how it's like, how do we operate in a world that doesn't, how do you detach yourself from completely being tied to digital device, computer, a phone, social media. You know, we were talking before. You're not on Facebook, but you are on Instagram.
Correct.
You are. Why? Can I
Good
ask
question.
that? So so a little bit about this. I'm gotten pretty heated about this.
Sure.
And now I'm time stamping our conversation, but that's fine. So yesterday, as you may know, there was this whistleblower on Facebook, previous employee, what have you, and she was extremely eloquent and seemed to be highly intelligent and versed in the knowledge and the processes, the algorithms, the complicacy of the whole social media world and platform. And the topic of this was predominantly focused on tweens and teens today, and the dilemma that they're having, they being all social media platforms. So not to pinpoint Facebook or anyone, but of the emotional and depression issues that are facing younger individuals through social media and eating disorders and everything else. And some fascinating things were, so I guess I'm helping affirm maybe your disengagement with a platform like Facebook.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned it, because now that I think about it, that's probably one of the reasons why I took that app off my phone, was because every time I would go on, I would come off it not feeling great. You hear only bad news, or you read through some things and you look at the comments and it's just all a bunch of negativity,
Right.
people not saying nice things about each other. And and the way they build a platform is kind of to be addictive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they like to give you bits of dope. They call it, I think, dopamine
Yep.
dosing, where the more you use it, the more you get addicted to it, and it makes you feel good. But I guess not feel good. It gets you addicted to
Tangled.
it. But yeah,
I would describe it as being like mentally tangled.
that's a good. Yeah,
You know, of like, okay, I want to see more of this, but at the same time, I know I don't need to be
Right.
seeing more of it. So
like, why am I looking at this if it's not making me feel good? But
So why Instagram then? No wrong answer. I'm
think-
just curious.
I could just flip through and just see a bunch of photos of what friends are up to, and I kind of filter out a little bit of some of the news outlets on there, and kind
The
of
rhetoric.
keep it to, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're although they're owned, or use Google or what have you, and YouTube and Gmail and all these different platforms that these companies own, but the products are distinguishingly different, and
Right.
the interface is different. And so how do you pick and choose where you're at today, and how do you find balance?
Yeah, it's evolved, because I initially joined because I do a lot of outdoor activities, camping, climbing, hiking, mountain biking, and initially I think I saw more of those on my feed, but more recently I think that content has been kind of I noticed that certain things pop up more than others, and they use some sort of algorithm to get certain images or stories in front of you in ads.
And that's so that she was. It's interesting because she was citing, being very specific about the virality and the growth rate of responses and your engagement. You being a consumer, engagement to certain ads, and I think about from a positive aspect. Let's say financial planning as an example. Well, okay, is there a medium that makes sense as an advisor today that adds value, and that is positive in nature and educational in nature? And how do I walk that balance to still be doing the right thing, if you want to call it that, and help to grow my business? Because you think about, I'm an advisor today. What are the options that I have to market and attract new clients?
Sure. And I guess you don't see as many advisors on Instagram because it's hard to show a picture of what good financial planning is. But there's a huge community, they call it FinTwit on Twitter, that I think half the advisors I know have some sort of account and are tweeting on there. And I guess some negativity, but I would say more support for other advisors in the community. And it's a fun way to follow along. A bunch of the kind of people I look up to are on there. And yeah.
And so you follow what they're tweeting about, and
in fact, one of Michael Kitz's, you're aware of.
Oh yeah.
So his Jeff Levine.
Yeah.
He's the one that digs deep into some of those tax proposals. And so as soon as that last one came out a couple weeks ago, he did an 80 tweet post, and it was kind of the same if you read his blog post, but just listing out every single thing, uh,
The
everything
details, the
details
high
of that.
level
Yeah.
detail. Wow.
hmm And so, and then you look down on the 80th comment, and you still see a bunch of people commenting and liking. So people are actually looking at that information, and
I mean, if you dive into that, so you know this, we have a relationship with APEC, which is
yeah,
Advanced
they're
Planning.
great. Yeah.
They've been great to us and a great force for advisors at large, and they've done their best with their team to unpack that. But you think about how sweeping that legislation potentially is to many clients,
hmm
many Americans. It's pretty intricate, it's pretty involved, it's pretty sweeping in terms of who and how it will impact people, both from, and so I'm just, what have you seen within that 80-point tweet? I mean, there's a lot there, but a few of the specific things. So obviously adjustments to estate taxes, capital gains adjustments, corporate tax rate changes, a lot of other, I would say, honorable mentions as it relates to how we treat backdoor Roths and the distribution of IRA assets over time and the inability to recharacterize in the future. And there's a lot of potential legislation that's coming down the pike through this thing. How do we prepare clients for this? And some of it stuff is retroactive.
Right. Which is interesting, because some things they set the deadline for end of the year because they want to increase the tax revenue, and some they said no, we're setting it. You have to have done it by today, and which is interesting.
Which is interesting for a law that hasn't yet passed.
So I'm just having conversations.
Are you getting questions regularly from clients about it?
A few.
Okay.
I think a lot of them are aware of it, and and then I'll have conversations, and I'll say, I'm monitoring it, but we don't know what's gonna be set in stone. And as soon as that happens, I'm gonna be the first one to dive in and see how it affects my clients' situations and take the appropriate action when that time happens.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, we got to just take it one as we get the information fed to us.
But it's hard. It's a roller coaster of emotions, because the changes that they make, and we thought it was. How many hours after the first proposal they kind of made a revision, and
it is. If you start to sink your teeth into it and stay attuned to it, it's maddening, because there's so much debate around what it's going to be, what the particular numbers are going to be of this rate or that rate or the date, and you'll make yourself mad trying to stay on top of it all. But that doesn't mean you don't bury your head in the sand, right? I mean, that we need to be somewhat aware and do our best to inform clients.
Right. This is our business. People are out there playing politics, but it's really going to affect us and our clients. So just staying on top of it, I think, is the only thing we kind of going to do right now.
And I think you mentioning that, it's like, it's politics aside. What are the facts, and how can we best deliver that to our clients? Of, this is not a political thing. Here's what the numbers are, and here's how we can be better planned for it. How do we optimize our results with what the legislation is going to be? Okay, so we got a few minutes left. Thank you very much for coming in here. You're a busy guy. You've got kids, right?
One
child. Okay, how old?
She's turning 2 in a couple weeks.
Oh, wonderful. That is a very, very fun time. I've got 2 boys, a little bit older, but you've got a wonderful and exciting journey ahead. More kids, hopefully, or no?
That's hopefully the plan. We just moved, so that way we'll have the room, both for working virtually. We needed the space, so.
Yeah, making room for growth in more ways than one.
Yep.
How do you manage your time? I know you like golf, outdoor activities. I'm always curious as to what process or insights people can share on how they manage their time. I imagine being president of FPA is demanding. I imagine you building and growing your practice is demanding. You're a husband and a father. How do we get it all done?
That one took a really long time, and I think that was probably one big pivotal change when I realized how valuable my time was, and adopting a system in order to plan out my week from the get-go. So I'm pretty protective of my calendar. And I think, I would say I'm building a lifestyle practice. And so from the beginning of the week, I'm always looking ahead to how can I allocate this most efficiently between my business, through FPA or whatever community service I'm doing, through my family. And for example, at least for the past year and a half, I've been taking most of Fridays off just to spend with my daughter. I know I won't get these days back, and so I want to just be able to spend as much time with that as I can with her now. And I think time management has been key in allowing me to have some sort of sanity, especially with all these things that we have going on in our lives.
And what about you time? What are your favorite me things to do, and how and when do you get it done?
I used to do a ton of outdoor
Because golf is
activities. Yeah,
time consuming.
golf I maybe get out once every couple months now.
Okay, okay.
But I love camping, and my wife and I used to go backpacking. But since we had a daughter, we bought a rooftop tent for the truck, and so we'll do those as family activities. I built a garage gym downstairs, and I'll use that as just an escape after I put my daughter down. So
That's the best use of stress relief I have found myself is physical exercise.
Yep,
And not just monotonous, boring fitness. For me, it's pushing my, to where my mind can only focus on the task at hand. And I found that to be the most cleansing.
It's like a form of meditation in a way.
But we're adding so much stress to our body at the same time. But I don't know. It works for me.
Definitely.
You're outdoorsy. I'm interested in this. You said the one place in the entire world that you would like to go is Antarctica, because everywhere else is pretty easily accessible.
Yeah, I always like to challenge myself, make myself better. And I think in terms of travel, you could easily just hop on a plane and fly anywhere. But for example, our honeymoon was to Everest Space Camp, and then we recently climbed the Matterhorn.
Where's that?
Mount Everest Base Camp. Yeah.
Everest. I thought you said Everest Space Camp. Is that what it's
Everest,
called?
Everest Base Camp, yeah.
Base Camp. Oh, wow. Okay, that was your honeymoon.
So we said, we'll be able to do all these things, nice luxurious trips when we're older, but while we're young, let's try to do as much as we can before we have kids. And so one of those places.
Were you a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout?
I was.
Eagle Scout?
Eagle Scout, yeah.
Oh, good for you. Me too.
So
That's great. So your love for being outdoors.
I think that's where I picked it up, and ever since, love spending time outdoors. So try to get out as much as we can.
Are you still involved in scouting on any level?
I haven't been. Maybe in the future, depends.
Well, you talk about an organization that's changed a lot. It's
Sure.
changed a lot over the years. I was still involved in scouting recently, Cub Master for my boys pack, and they bridged over into being Boy Scouts. But that's a whole other conversation.
Definitely.
It was wonderful, wonderful for my upbringing, and shaped in many ways who I am and the perspectives that I have in life. So kudos to you for that. I commend you.
Thanks.
So 40 under 40, last thing. What does that mean to be 40 under 40, and how do you get to that point? What's that process look like?
So it's all through nominations, and I think over the past 3 to 4 years, I just started dedicating myself more to giving back to the profession, volunteering with FPA. I was heavily involved with the Next Gen group before that, and I think just my involvement in a lot of these organizations has led me to meet a lot of different people in the planning community, and so very appreciative that they awarded me that. And,
So what exactly is it? It's awarded by who?
Investment News. They
Investment
have a magazine.
News for 40 advisors under 40 years old.
Correct.
How old are you? 39, 38?
33.
Oh man, you're a spring chicken.
So yeah.
Good for you. That's great. So it's a pretty sweet fraternity.
Yep.
You were talking
So,
about a gathering that you're going to be doing as not an award, but as a perk.
Yeah. So normally they invite everyone out before they take all these photos and before the publication in the magazine. And so this year they pushed everything way back, so they're finally having it. And I'll be flying out this Friday and get to meet the other advisors that were awarded.
The other 39 in this class?
Correct. And
Others as well?
Yeah, they invite previous years. So there's,
wow.
I think it's been going on for maybe about 5 or 6 years.
Wow. That's interesting. That'll be you'll be in good company.
Yeah, excited, looking forward to it.
Very good. Well, congratulations to you. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
sharing
me.
a little bit about your practice, FPA, of course, and what it means to be a top advisor. Enjoy. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment or review. Be sure to check us out on social media at Optimized Advisor Podcast. Till next time.